Shalom Aleichem, Bruchim Abayim, welcome to this program in honor of Rabbi Yoel's first yahrzeit. Rabbi Yoel's impact on Chassidim, all who learn Chassidus, is immeasurable. Every person who learns Chassidus, anyone who knows about Chassidus, has been affected by Rabbi Yoel's teachings, Rabbi Yoel's thinking. Rabbi Yoel took the Rebbe's Torah and formulated it, organized it in a way that everyone could understand it clearly and apply it. The ideas of the Chedushim of Chassidus, the Vechter, the Rashvi, these ideas and many more were formulated clearly and taught by Rabbi Yoel. Many times we speak about Rabbi Yoel, we speak about his being a chayzer of the Rebbe and a teacher of Chassidus, the one who wrote Sefer Erchim, and his deep shiurim. But Rabbi Yoel was more than that. Rabbi Yoel was a Mashpia. He was a Mashpia for 7 decades, and he taught thousands of Talmidim, Vachrim. Later he gave shiurim to Anash, to Chutza, in other communities, in other areas, in America and Israel. And his impact is tremendous, and we all owe so much to Rabbi Yoel. Rabbi Yoel wasn't just an intellectual, a person who enjoyed the depth of Chassidus and the Rebbe's Torah. Rabbi Yoel could have sat by himself and learned Chassidus. Rabbi Yoel went and gave shiurim. He went out, especially in his later years. He traveled to other areas, other communities, and he gave shiurim wherever he can, as much as he could. It was something that was important to him, that people should understand the emes, the truth of Elokus, and should live with it, should understand that this is the true reality. He took the time with individuals, with groups, to try to communicate that and give that over. Rabbi Yoel was, of course, a great maskil, and he understood Chassidus in a very deep way, and he taught that as well. But his mission, his goal was that everyone should understand Chassidus. And understanding to him meant that you appreciate, you understand, and live with the truth of the idea. It's not just a person's own feelings, his own inspiration. This is true. This is real. And that's what he lives with. Yeah, there's an expression that Rabbi Yoel would quote, that the maskil lives with he thinks about the inyan. Yeah, he doesn't think about himself. He thinks about the inyan. And at every level, Rabbi Yoel communicated that. He taught that Chassidus the teachings of Chassidus is a real thing, that the truth of Elokus is a real thing. And as a result, when a person appreciates that reality, when a person realizes that, then their hanhaga, their behavior, changes automatically. Rabbi Yoel insisted that people should understand Chassidus. They should understand what Chassidus is saying, and not just to read it superficially. A person should be real about where he's holding, not to delude himself into all types of madregas, but to be real and to just understand where he's at and what Chassidus is and what the truth is. Rabbi Yoel, when he spoke, he did not, in his verbrengens, he wouldn't dramatize. He wouldn't raise his voice to make a point. He spoke straight, and he explained it. He explained it in a logical way. When Rabbi Yoel, in his involvement in Afatzim Yonis and spreading Chassidus in other communities, Rabbi Yoel knew just how to communicate things in a way that would be understood. And Chassidus could be understood and accepted by everyone. It wasn't just that he was a smart communicator and he knew how to deliver things, understand the nature of the people, which of course he did. But by him, the only interest was what is going to bring people closer to Chassidus, what is going to help people understand it, not trying to create some type of excitement or drama around Chassidus, but to teach the ideas clearly so that people would understand it. A few years ago in Crown Heights, there was a movement where people felt that they did not get enough satisfaction from Torah mitzvahs, and they needed some type of other inspiration. And they started a group over this, and this was gaining momentum. And Rabbi Yoel was very bothered by this, that people think that they need to look for answers in other places. And it wasn't that he was coming with a isser, saying something should be not allowed. It was that he realized that by people who were looking elsewhere, it meant that they didn't understand, they didn't appreciate what Chassidus was about. And he got involved, and that's when they had the big asifa in Crown Heights, and he spoke strongly about this point. And after that, he started to get involved more. He offered himself to get involved and to give shiurim to Anash, both in Crown Heights, and we had the recorded shiurim, weekly shiurim for 2 years, over 2 years that he recorded, saying ideas of Chassidus and from the Rebbe Sichos, which are practical for life, that offer guidance on what it means to live as a Yid. And Baruch Hashem, we have these recordings, and many of them were transcribed, and we hope to be publishing them soon. Mirz Hashem. There's so much to share from Yoel. I'd just like to share a few inyonim, things that I heard from Yoel. One thing that was very important to Yoel was having the right values, the right understanding, the right approach, and not trying to sensationalize Chassidus or certainly not to make up stories that aren't true or aren't accurate, or take things out of context in order to make things sound greater. Even though Rabbi Yoel very much taught, he stood for the Rebbe's chidushim and the Rebbe's ideas that are relevant to our generation. But Rabbi Yoel didn't like when people would try to make things up and make things great just for the sake of sensationalizing. One particular story that Rabbi Yoel shared was a sikha that Rabbi spoke about how Rabbi Akiva, when they peeled his skin, when the Romans were killing him, and his Talmud Master Rabbi Akiva, when he was saying Shema, how could you ad kedei kach, how can you do that? And Rabbi Akiva says that my whole life I was waiting, when will this Mashpia when will I be able to do this? And so the Rebbe explained in the Sikha that what Rabbi Akiva was telling them, what they were asking, Rabbi Akiva was telling them is that how is it possible that such a thing, that there could be such a stira telakus, that Achdus Shema Yisrael is promoting Achdus Hashem, and that Hashem is one, and here you have such a terrible thing happening against Rabbi Akiva for teaching Torah. And Rabbi Akiva said that no, this is also part of Achdus Hashem. It's there in order to arouse a Yid with Mesiras Nefesh. And So the following day, Rabbi Yoel and two other Chassidim were sitting in 770 and discussing the Sikha. And Rabbi Yoel explained, based on what the Rebbe had explained earlier and explained Chassidus in general, that when we say that the negative forces are also good, it doesn't mean that the negative itself is good, but it means that there's a nitzis alakus, there's a spark of alakus, which is in the bad, which is alakus and which is good. The other chassid who was there claimed, no, this is a new chiddush of the Rebbe, which was now that we're getting closer to Mashiach, now the etzem and the kuda of the Teres Baal Shem Tov is being revealed, and this means that the bad itself is also that Shabbos. The Rebbe spoke exactly about this Nakuda, and the Rebbe said exactly like Rabbi Yoel said, that when we say that the klipa, that the bad is good, is also good. It's not talking about the bad itself, but the nitzis alakus which is in it. And after the Fabrengen, that other person who had claimed otherwise said that no, it's because the Chassidim spoke about it. That's why they because Rabbi Yoel had spoken and said voiced his opinion. That's why they ruined it. Rabbi Yoel would laugh about that. But Rabbi Yoel's point was that there's no need to dafka look for new chidushim and to try to reinterpret things, to understand what the Rebbe is saying, what Chassidus is saying, understand what it is, and without trying to misrepresent it. And a similar note, Rabbi Yoel was very much, we know in his last few decades, Rabbi Yoel was very much Oisek in Afatz Samayonis and spreading Chassidus beyond Lubavitch and all types of communities. And Rabbi Yoel did this in a very much in a way that everyone could understand and accept what he was teaching. And Rabbi Yoel said that there's no need to do any propaganda in trying to teach, in trying to promote Chassidus. Chassidus speaks for itself. You have to teach Chassidus, and you teach Chassidus accurately, and then people taste Chassidus and they'll want to come, they'll want more. Rabbi Yoel also emphasized the need to understand what you believe. It's not enough that something should remain in the realm of belief, of emunah, but that has to come down into understanding. He once pointed out that Chassidus, the explanations of Chassidus, when we have an explanation of emunah, it's not a proof. It's not trying to prove the emunah. It is explaining what the emunah is. Because in order to believe, you need to understand what it is that you're believing in. You can't believe without knowing. You can't just say emunah. You need to know what exactly is the emunah. What exactly am I believing in? Rabbi Yoel was involved in the preparation, the writing of the Likutei Sichos, specifically Chelek Aleph through Tes. But Rabbi Yoel especially felt that Chelek Aleph through Daled, the first four Halakim of the Likutei Sichos, that is something which is shayach for everyone, that everyone should know very well. These are the Yesodis that everyone should know. And he once told me that Chelek Aleph through Daled is the most important sichos. He said after that, that's already Haskalah and Lamdus, deeper ideas. But Aleph through Daled, those halakim are as important that everyone should know them, because those have the yesodis, the fundamental ideas of the Rebbe's teachings.
De andere zijn Haskalah en Lamdus.
One of the points that Rabbi Yoel demanded very much, spoke about regularly, is the idea of bittul and being dedicated to the Kavanah Le'ena. Obviously, of course, the Chassidus is all about bittul, putting himself aside for the Eibishter. But the Yoel brought out how the Chiddush of the Deir HaShvi is that even a greater bittul is being demanded of us. There was once a time, before in our previous generations, that there was room for a person to be involved in his own ruchnius, in his own ruchniistic interests, and to feel how much, where he's holding, and what he's accomplished, how batal he is. But by the Rebbe, Rabbi Yoel brought out, it was about complete total bittul. Not to be involved so much in what am I doing and what am I accomplishing, but to not be involved in yourself at all. Like the Rebbe says in the famous Maimer of Lysia Meshakela Tafshin Yud Beis. And this was really what Rabbi Yoel stood for, whether it was in learning, in the way of learning Chassidus, in Avodah, in Shlichus. It was about being totally übergegeben and not even thinking about yourself, just what is needed, and to do that.
Okay, Shabbat Shapiro, thank you very much for coming on today.
No, sure, no question. This is important, so I agree right away.
No. Okay, so we have it's Rabbi Yoel's first yard site. We all know Rabbi Yoel as the Toizer of the Rebbe, the Mashpia for so many years, for so many suffering in the life. So if you could share with us a little bit about your own experiences with Yoel, when you first got to know him.
Okay, if you want to start from when I first got to know him, is there's two levels in getting to know him. To know who he is one thing, and then to get to know him. So my first Fabrengen first Yechidus I was Toshin Yud Gimel when my parents came from Europe after the war. So I went to Yechidus before we moved to Cleveland. They joined them to Cleveland. I went to Yechidus. But Fabrengen, the first time I was by the Rebbe's Fabrengen was Toshin Yud Ches, Toshin Chai. For Simchas Torah, Toshin Chai. And I remember the tziyur as a kid. I was a young kid then. And I remember the tziyur of after the Fabrengen, the Chazorah. And everyone pointed out, this is Rabbi Yoel, very young man with like yellow glasses. And I was listening to them just as a kid to Chazorah, and obviously I didn't understand much. I just saw that his Chit Chadivur is not clear. And the truth is like this, that as great as his inyan was of being able to be Masber Inyanim, you had to get used to his Chit Chadivur, to the way he spoke. So that took a few moments till you got into it, but then when you found out, you could see who he was. So that's the first time I got to know who he is, and I was in awe of this person, Rabbi Yoel, the Rebbe's Chayzer. But then when I came to learn to New York, after my bar mitzvah, I came in the end of Tavshin Chof. I came in El Tavshin Chof. I came to learn. I went to Bedford, and he was one of the Mashpiim in Bedford. So the first year, the Seder was the 1 year you learn by Lis, and another year in Chassidus. Next year you learn Chassidus. 3 years in Sifta Hastas. It doesn't call it Sifta, they call it Yeshiva Kahn or whatever. Maybe Sifta. So 1 year by Rabbi Lis, 1 year by Rabbi David Rask, and 1 by Rabbi Yoel. So the first year I learned by Rabbi Lis, but I got closer to Rabbi Yoel. So the next year I learned a little bit by Rabbi David, but I used to go into Rabbi Yoel's classes. How did we get close? Because the Seder used to be that after every Fabrengen, Shabbos Zikifar, Shabbos Vorche, wherever the Fabrengen was, the next day, Shich Siddur, that was not a Shich Siddur, the Rabbi Yoel would Chazar Sichas for, besides Chazara that he had in some 70, the official Chazara, he did it for us boys, 13, 14, 15-year-old boys. And that was for everybody. So I was there, and I used to sometimes write down the Sichas as a young kid like that. And B'meila made our relationship closer. And then I started even in the middle of the second year going into his Shir Chassidus, and I got to hear his Shiurim. And I got, like, I wouldn't use the word friendly because it's a Talmud, Mashpia, Mushpas type of thing, but that's what he had. His Ashpoah was so great then. And when he was in Bedford, that's when he really put in a lot of work. The Seis used to bring by special year with the Pagas, not Stamazay. And again, we were 13, 14, 15-year-old kids. And he would bring a Kislev, a ganze Nacht. He used to bring till 6 o'clock in the morning. Or other times, special times, he used to bring. And that had a very great ashpoah. So that's when we got close. And basically, if I want to use these words, I don't know if there's proper way to describe it. He molded us. Our kita, actually, it was a very good kita. Then even the boys were young boys, but it was a very good kita. And basically, we were all kailing for it. And he molded us into whatever the light became. Bochrim later and the light. It's a lot thanks to him. Now, I have to say the honest truth. His hashpoah was not mainly focused on every yochid. Like some Mashpiim they have a special relationship with this bocher, and they talk to him for hours, and this had hashpoah. His hashpoah was more b'derech makif, but it went into apnimius. As his hashpoah was the way he verbringt and the way he described things, the way he explained in yon and do his masber in yon and Mercedes. So it pushed verangehakt sich in Kopf by us to cook what Chassidus is and what Chassidish is and how you're supposed to behave. And the main nekuda was, one of the main nekudas is kashrus. And he verbringt a lot about being bottled to the Rebbe. And you remember, a few verbringers, we cried. Da sein with the Rebbe is a typewriter. Just like a typewriter types. So the typewriter writes a sicher, types a maimer, a ganze maimer. It came from the typewriter. He was basically talking about himself because he was the Chazan. But the bittul that you have to have, and that reingehakt in the Kopf, and what Chassidim mean, the difference between Chassidus and not learning Chassidus, and those who are not Chassidus, that came from him a lot. That's as far as his hashpoah is concerned on the Bochim, and that brought. Doesn't mean that he didn't speak. There were times, and he did speak. I remember myself, I had a long conversation with him once. Actually, this was already after we came to 770, because we came to 770. I became 16 years old when I learned the 770. In other words, I came 15 and a half. But he continued being our Mashpia. Our class was considered his Mishporim. His Mukasharim. The elder Bochum 770 used to laugh. Those are Mukasharim. But we used to, so even in 770, he came along with us and continued being. So I remember I had a long conversation with him, talking, and one of the things he spoke to me then was the Negeya Tracht Chassidus. In other words, he did not stress so much davening barichas. I mean, he mentioned it in the but that was his focus when he did about Chassidus, like learning a lot of Chassidus, verstehen und trachten Chassidus. Trachten Chassidus in order to understand Chassidus, the Verein, trachten in them. Even he says he once saw a young bocher that was davening with the minion, but in the middle it was a vertracht, and he even didn't realize that they're saying kedusha, and he chapsach, and he learned to talk around they miss kedusha. So he says he looked at the bocher, and the bocher was very embarrassed. What was he embarrassed? He missed kedusha, but he says that's what I'm talking about. He didn't even chap that they're saying kedusha to get up. So I remember a long conversation with them. Besides smaller conversation things, but the main thing was not so much the Yechidim, but the group. He verbringt with the group. That's as far as his Hashpoah and Bochum. Actually, the Rebbe, he told me that the Rebbe and Yechidus, after he got married, told him he should speak to the Anhola, they should give him the job of being Mashpia. So they gave him the job in Bedford for the young 14, 15-year-old kids. Told me next year when he went into Yechidus, the Rebbe asked him what I said to you last year. So he said, yeah, they gave me a job in Bedford. The Rebbe started smiling. Nicht das er gemeint. Ich habe gemeint auf Bochum. Aber also soll sein. And the emphasis, it soll sein, is geworden. I mean, in other words, he continued being, I don't know, I really don't know if later, after we left Bedford, if he continued being in Bedford, I don't even know, but he continued with us in the 70. And we were with him the whole time. Yeah. That's what the Rebbe wanted. It should be Mashpia and Bochum. And his Hashpoah, it was once I wrote something to the Rebbe. It's whatever it is, it's more personal. I wasn't personal with this, gave to others also, and the Rebbe answered me, Yidabri Mashpia Shaloi. So I went to Rabbi Yoel, even though at that time I was already a little older, so he was still our Mashpia with no question about it, but we already worked together. So it was a little bit awkward to come get Mashpia, but it doesn't matter. And I remember my impression I got from him that this time he really, really spoke to me like a Mashpia, like a Molek Mashpia, which you imagine. That was his chush. And the Iker chush was he was able to be chutz chazorah, which is something in itself that we have to talk about, but his hashpoeh in being masbid in Yonim Chassidus. That, I mean, it's no chidushim when I'm saying everyone knows that. Besides his chit chadib, you got used to it, but afterwards he was able to be Yiddish Stockman, wirklich nachtellerlach, the Yonim that he was masbid. When he was masbid in it was so clear to you. It was so clear. He was able. He had the chush in both the Yonim. You know, some people have a chush in hafshote. Some people have a chush in halboshe. Some people have the nemen to be mafshit hadvorim megashpiusen, to explain the Yonim Chassidus in more in a. And some people have a chush in halboshe, to be malbishet, to bring it down in asias that we could relate to. I think he had both myos. That's the Chalgel Amir. I don't know, maybe other people feel differently. So he was able to be mafshit and bring it over, and then to be malvishit. That when you left with a gedaink that you understood, even though we're talking about Tifin Yonim Chassidus. He had that chush, he had that keach. Besides the keach as a that's already the second subject of his life. This we're talking about his hashpoah part of life. But then there's a second part, which is the chazaret. I mean, to go ahead.
Right, so when he you speak about how he was magic to Brahman, he was bring and he put things down and he gave the ideas of Chassidus. What were the kind of things he spoke about? And some of the young that we spoke about, they became so widespread today that we don't even attribute it to it. Yeah, we don't realize it. Reals this whole way of teaching things, looking at things became
one of the things that was his theme many times, let's call it theme if you want to use the Gashmic words, was to oplegen the emeskeit from the Meibishten, the reality, the emeskeit from Teire, and the emeskeit von Mitzvahs, the emeskeit from Ayid, from Aneshome, the real emes. That was his stress many times. He spoke a lot, and when he was masbid it became very clear, because he can't untap me the hand, mamish. I mean, the way he explained it reminded me story. There's a story that Shmuel Greinem, once it was Friday, those in Russia, those in the middle of winter, it's Mashpia, you could have might have 3 o'clock in the afternoon or 4 o'clock already. So one Friday night, he might have ate the Suda. He's given 5 o'clock. So he went to sleep. By 11 o'clock, he got up already. I think it's a ganze Nacht lernen Chassidus. In Shul. We learned the meaning von Einig Mulvade. And that reingetracht, and there sehr viel reingelegt in them, that he stayed up like that till the morning. Came the morning, people started coming to Shul already. And he opened his eyes, and he said over it. Took him a while. What's going on here? So there are building, there are mention. That's the way he told him. I remember my Zayda. My Zayda was the Rebbe's Malamed, so he used to live in Cleveland, so he had a Pemapik Margolius. So once I remember, he was Fabengin. From there was no Lavich Tamad there. We tried in the middle of the winter in Cleveland, was very freezing. I was a kid, I was there, Masber Eined Mulvade in such a way that I remember every kid I could understand. When they finished the Fabrengen, they got up, there's not a lot of people, and one guy, it was snowing, and he couldn't find his boots that he brought. Someone else turns around, one of the other people, and says to him, "What's Kaloshin? Ben Kaloshin? The truth, I argue like you could that, and the emeskite of Abish to see that this is the emeskite of Torah and the emeskite of Neshama. That was his stress. And the famous thing that he told over when he gave his bus stop, and everyone knows it. I mentioned it many times. So I thought one mullet was the Samoshel. He said it happened to him, but I didn't think it was so. I'll say it in a second. But I spoke by Shleishim in Borough Park, Hechel Menachem. So I mentioned it, and I said, Stammet is going to Moshel. So one of the people there, not a Lubavitch, said, no, I heard it from him privately. He said it actually happened to him. What was the story? He was once standing by a bus stop, waiting for the bus, waiting. People gathered. The bus isn't coming. So he turns around to another Yid, like the Yid, no, was the bus is bald kommen. Will the bus come? So the Yid answered like the Yid answered. Otherwise, Mashiach kommen, also ich know the bus would come. Otherwise, Mashiach should come as fast as the bus. So he says, I told him, I don't know what you're talking about. The bus will come or not, I'm not sure. Mashiach will come, check the Torah. The Torah check the SMS. It's not that what. So the guy says to me, I did have Shara Lubavitcher. In other words, this was a boshel to give out the Chassidus makes that the emeskite of Ruchni is the emeskite to look at it, the Kuzvip Shitas and Elam Chachus, and all the Hasboras in it. Then you go into the deeper Yonim, the all these Yonim was said and done. These are the Haskalah of it. But there was one goal here to come out of this Nakuda to Emesavai Leilam. That's now everyone think, I'm sure there'll be other people that could say they took other Nakudas from him, but this is the way I saw him.
No, so you're touching a very interesting point. I think we are thinking of Yoel, for his Haskalah, it's tremendous Hamacha, and the deep ideas of this. But with Yoel, most of what he pushed the most was the basic Yonim of mitzvahs and Shem Yisrael, and these things, and bringing out how these are real things, and not just things that you're supposed to believe and think about within the Gavra. This is real.
Right.
It's actually that way. And Yoel spoke about how the seichel, not so much inside deep seichel, but seichel in the reality of things, and just understanding the thing as it is.
I'll tell you, once he told me, I was sitting with bringing, not that I was wearing, not so long ago, maybe 10 years ago. There was a story printed in Kfar, a little story been given that there was a guy who used to rent a kretschmer from a porets, and he pays 10 ruble, I don't remember, 10 ruble a year. Once he couldn't go, he was not feeling well, so his son went instead. So he's making the deal, and the porets said, you know what, if you take it for 5 years, instead of each year going 10 ruble, something like that, I'll give you 40 ruble. You'll save yourself 10 ruble, give me a chatchila for if I had to 5 years. So it's a good deal. He came back and he told his father, he told his father that I saved that money, so I did this. So I said, what? You wasted money. So you just wasted, for 1 year, but the other years, why did you do it? You wasted 30 ruble, you wasted. So Rabbi Yoel tells me, from the Meise, von dem, was bei ihm gelegt haben, ist nachher in Mashiach. Bei ihm das gewesen Porsche for living Geld. That's it. That's how it was real. Porsche, you said the time it was not. Don't you believe in Mashiach? The time it was, you made me lose money because him it was real. That was a dogma he gave to the MS guy that's like the MS guy. It fits to your gashmistic life, not saruchmistic linyam, but the same thing with Torah, the same thing with the MS guy and David.
You spoke about how the Rebbe was not checking zuzas.
Yeah, that he spoke many times. Even a little kid, the Rebbe trained us, a little kid race. The moment you hear somebody is sick, you say, oh, you have checking, but I've cooked the mezuzahs. Doesn't say, I've called my doctor. So the Rebbe just said, it's true. I mean, that was his thing that to make it all real. And he was able to be masberit in such a way that that's the Maila. Because Vechter kemazogni, if you don't understand it, the says is perfect.
Yoel, so Yoel is more, you could say that Yoel is more about the emes and the haskalah. So it comes with the emes, and the haskalah was the way of how to.
Even though his main thing was haskalah, his main thing was the understanding, the seichel behind it. But it's also the way to explain it, the way to express it. But the Nakuda bottom line was the emes kind of what this is.
Moving to the other idea that you spoke about, Yoel, of the stashis. You spoke a lot about the stashis in the Rebbe. Could you elaborate a little bit more, both how Yoel himself, how you saw Yoel himself as a butler in the kitchen for the Rebbe, and how he demanded that from him?
Well, he said to me clearly, I think maybe he said it once under the Torah, I don't know, that when he came here, he was here a while, I don't know, a few weeks, a few months, he was planning to go back. And he asked the Rebbe, and the Rebbe told him, and he told you, he allowed you to come, so Shimon belong here. He told me that he saw in the beginning, he saw the Rebbe is something special. The Lashon he used to me was, this is a Ishmura Mayam, over a Rebbe, and he understood what a Rebbe is. So to him, in the beginning, it took time to look up like. And he said, you know who got it to me? Rabbi Mendel told him, if you only know the yachas that the Frierdiker Rebbe had to the Rebbe, it would be different. So he got him he pushed. This was, I don't know, a few weeks, a few months after he came already. In other words, his discussion is, because a lot of times I wonder, those Chassidim, if you have Chassidim that became a kusher, the second the Frierdiker one was installed, became a kusher, I can't understand it. Unless it's superficial, then Hank is there, morgen is der zweite. Elamai, that you feel that the Zelber, that takes time. So I can't understand. Unless it's a Hich on the Neshama, I can feel it. But Anoshim came to get that, so it takes, and Take, he once told me that Teichen also. I spoke to him privately many hours. That Teichen, he said that. He also said it's not simple to say, this guy's drinking a kusher. But yet, it's hard to see a person should become a kusher right away if you're be'emes a kusher. So he said it, and it took him time. It didn't take him long. Some Chassidim, maybe the elder Chassidim took 2 years, 3 years, I don't know. But it's choget like be'em, the emes, and then he became completely kusher, and he felt himself the Rebbe's a typewriter. As much as he knew that he is the chaser, and sof kol sof, the Rebbe's Torah that we have is all thanks to him, even though not everything he wrote. A lot of things written by others, he's the Mokeh. In other words, the Rebbe Verbring, he has it, and from that is geworden, that geschrieben, that this, and this, it came so many svarim and everything, but he's definitely the Mokeh. He knew that, but he really felt that this is not a
He still retained his bittul throughout all that.
He really felt that this is the Rebbe's Keches. Felt got a broche from the Rebbe also. I remember one of the Rebbe told him to drink a cup of wine, and he says, "Os gedenke was meret." Rebbe says, "Give him a broche, os gedenke was meret." But it was not only his Koren, it was also his tfisa. That I think by him, if we're talking about that part, I don't think, and again, I'm not going to judge, that he had a photographic memory. I don't think so. Okay, I mean, das ist ein Maton, was man kriegt. I mean, he had a gewaltige Zekon, there's no question about it, but not. The main thing by him was the tfisa. Because the Rebbe spoke, it's very, sometimes hard, because the middle is, the middle is, you got to happen, and you got to happen in the kuta clothes to see. That's how he remembered. I could see from him. He remembered it because it tape is given in the Yonim, Mervi and Gedenk. So Gedenk, if you don't have his Zekon, it doesn't work. But he was, all this was his bittul to the Rebbe. He was, because Be'emes, you would imagine a person like him with such, I don't know which better words to use, such a position would have feel a certain specialty legabe his closeness to the Rebbe. Feel specialty. So like he has it's a Rebbe, he could go over sometimes more than others. Nothing like him. And he felt that he had a schus to write the sichos. Mamish, it's a schus. And he once told me privately, the truth is, I don't know if I ever told this to anybody. I think it's the first time I'm saying it. And he told me when he wrote the first 9 volumes and look at the sichos. Later, it was the Rebbe wanted him to work on Sefer Erkim with all kinds of other chreisen that he had, and other people started. So he said to me once, he felt bad that he couldn't do it. But the main thing he says he feels bad is that this is a chelik of these kashrus, and here there's a certain minimizing of what it was before, because that part he didn't have. And that's what bothered him very much. Remember, I was taking a walk for him down on Kingston Avenue, and he's telling me, I want to tell you, this is really what. It's not, because his thing is his kashrus. That was.
Yeah. And he had a Yaakov like a Talmud. You see him, he's like a Talmud to the Rebbe.
Yeah. Take another circles. A person like that, besides his personality, being the chazer, would be Sheikh Ilam Alchus would sit, but he would. And the Rebbe did not like push it either. The Rebbe did not want to take away his bittul, because the Rebbe could. At Kedikah, there were times of Fabrengens that the Rebbe once spoke things that was not was something about him, something that he said or he did, and the Rebbe was not happy. And the Rebbe could do. Why could the Rebbe wouldn't do it about somebody else? I mean, because he was a kela for this, because his bittul was completely, and that's what he instilled. A lot of the ways of looking at the Rebbe and things like that, the day Rashvi, what it is and this, comes from him. And it's not his chidushim. He understood what the Rebbe took it on. He understood together the day Rashvi. And a lot of things that we have is because he was able to be mastered.
And when you say this idea that everyone knows and everyone shares and all Mashpia speak about it,
yeah. And it's all because the way he was able to be mastered, he was able to. And then the Rebbe said, "Dei lo mashkim et teiras Rabbi la'chedu." I mean, there's a part of the story is known, and part of the story he didn't want me to tell. He told it to me himself. He tells me like this. This is the famous story of the Kavatayde. The Rebbe spoke once about the Kavatayde. If you cross the Kavatayde, you have to have your own Shavuos. So came Tovshin Chov days, I think. Somebody stayed in his house. Shavuos was that time Sunday, and the guy came from Japan, and then it turned out Rabbi made a cheshbon that his really Shavuos should be then. Anyway, the next day they asked the Rebbe, and the whole arich is there, but that's not the point I'm trying to make. So then, when he went into the Rebbe, they called him in. The Rebbe, he went to the Rebbe. So the Rebbe said, "Yeah, obviously you got to keep your own Shavuos." So he tells me, this is the way he told me. Some people told me that he heard it differently. I heard it from himself. And when I wanted, the ones were sitting by a Fabreng and trying to tell it, he says, "B'shumei from your son." I didn't say it. Later I told it. So he tells me like this. He asked the Rebbe at that time, if the person who keeps his own Shavuos, which is not Vov Sivan, does he say, so, because the Alter Rebbe writes, if your Shavuos is not, you don't say it. If it came on Hey or Zion, you didn't say it. So this guy doesn't, he says to me that he asked the Rebbe didn't want to answer. He saw the Rebbe, he asked the second time, I think that finally he almost like pressured, and the Rebbe answered that he shouldn't say. Okay. Then he tells me he bothered him for a long time, that he Kiviyachol pressured the Rebbe to give an answer, but the Rebbe didn't want. How in the world could I do that? But mir ist eingefallen that I have a right to justify it for himself. He shouldn't feel so bad. Because after all, I write the sichas. So I write that this will come out, and I'll have to be right. So it's good that I asked to find out. It wasn't all done. Says, I think it was Yuchvat after that, between the sichas, this part he didn't want to tell. He was singing, and he's standing, down, and the Rebbe is up, and he is thinking, he doesn't know why. But this came into his mind, this problem, that how could he do such a thing? And then he was thinking to himself, before, maybe because I write the sichas. As he's thinking, someone gives him a clap. Yoel, the Rebbe ruft, the Rebbe called him. The Rebbe called him. He kriegt a roof. The Rebbe gave him a Chaim. And the Rebbe said, "No, so he says, clearly, the Rebbe was read his machshava and gave him the answer. So he didn't want him to tell. But the Rebbe used that lotion, he told me. There's another time he told me that happened, something like this. And the Rebbe was going on by Yaakov with the Sefer, and the people pushing, it was when he was still a bocher, I think, pushing to push the Rebbe Sefer, and he was amongst them. And the Rebbe took the Sefer and pushed it toward Rabbi Yoel to give a kush. And the Rebbe and the bocher felt it. So the Rebbe said, "No, schreibt doch die Memorin." So the Rebbe did say this, so he was, but nevertheless, the Rebbe didn't behave to him like to say kind of him a lot. That's not what he needed. He was able to get complete. Remember when the Rebbe came out with Chanukah that year, first year, made a whole big tumult about it. He went every day Chanukah. Remember, I went with him. We went to Kirat and into places like a kosher person.
We get Ashpa, so I'd say Yamov was giving and teaching and as much as he could. Teach cities, it was his life to teach cities and give over there to teach the same Maimorim again and again and again and the same way and he never got tired of it.
Even if he said the same and the same Burim, that's true.
It's his life. To give teach citizens what his favorite was. Speaking about young
and people felt it. Not Lubavitchers who were Mashpia from him felt it. Together.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I'm not forgetting all the Hashpoas and Tals. The main thing by us is he brought the Rebbe statement to the world, and the Zet Nasigem and Hashemayim, because he went on the boat to leave Eretz Yisrael, Yuchvat, Friedrich Rebbe was in Stalik, Shabbos, Sunday he went on the boat. He didn't even know about it, and he came mamish directly to the Rebbe.
No.
So it's in Hashemayim, and the truth is, I'm not so sure that in the days before we had such a chaser. I'm not sure. Like the Chazor from Tzemach Tzedek, from Alter Rebbe, or Mittel, I mean, these are talking about the regular chaser. I don't know. Shimon was a chaser. Rabbi Simpson was a chaser by the Rebbe Rashab. No one comes to his head. I don't know. So many hours, hours and hours. So Simchas Torah came out Thursday and Friday. You know what happened? Simchas Torah, Shmini Atzeres was Thursday. Thursday night was a Fabrengen. Friday night there was a Fabrengen. Shabbos afternoon there was a Fabrengen. Motzei Shabbos, Nacht there was the big Simchas Torah Fabrengen. Altogether, how many hours is it? 15 hours, I don't know. There was no Chazorah in between. There was no time for Chazorah. So what we used to do, I used to stand next to him in my time, or later, I don't know. My time, I stood next to him by Yaakov. So quietly, he used to Chazar in Kudus. So we should, but like this, to remember later all these hours and know which one was by this Fabrengen, what was by this Fabrengen. It's special.
Everything.
With Chazar. Later we said on Chazor, after some Chazor, said on Chazor. Because I know some of them, the Sheikhs I wrote, but he used to sit on Chazar. And Chazar mit Aseder, like take the Anochas from the Tovshin Chav Beis, Chav Hey, Chavov, all these Anochas from these Fabrengens. It's all from his Chazor. He didn't write many of those, because earlier as he wrote, and he stopped. But it's all from his Chazor. So, anyway, yeah.
We owe him a lot.
Owe him a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you very much. Call
to, yeah. Thanks.
So I want to call Wolberg. Thank you for joining us. So I understand that you were a Talmud at Yoel. You share with us a little bit about your experience.
I can tell you like this. I mean, when I was in 770, it wasn't real. I was in 770, let's say. I came to 770 Lamadalit. At that time, Rabbi Yoel didn't really give shiurim in 770. You really had no access to Rabbi Yoel. But you could go speak to him. But as a Talmud, to be a Talmud of his, there was really only one way. And that was, there was a kfutza. They used to go to Ocean Parkway. They were like a kfutza of shluchim, so to speak, to Ocean Parkway. And they would be like, they would be in the Zal of Ocean Parkway, to Mechazik Ocean Parkway. Rabbi Yoel would be their Mashpia. That's the place where Rabbi Yoel gave Shiur Mechsidus. So that time, I think it was in Lamed Vov, if I'm not mistaken. Lamed Vov, that's when we went to Ocean Parkway. My Kita, we went to Ocean Parkway. There's a lot of the Kitas went that time, the Rebbe sent on Shlichus to Eretz Yisrael, and to Canada, and to whatever, and to Brunois. But there was a kfutza that went to Ocean Parkway, and that's when we started learning Rabbi Yoel. He used to learn with us. He used to bring with us. It was like Rabbi Yoel was very fanuman with us at that point in time. That was, so to speak, his kita. That was, so to speak, the beginning of getting to know him. When it's just just saying that's how it developed. Vechter, I mean, later on, as time developed, Rabbi Yoel also was a very, besides who he was as far as his seichel was concerned, he was a very personable person. He was an extremely personable person. In other words, there were various different issues, that I went through, and Rabbi Yoel always took a very personal interest. But it was very personally involved. It wasn't like Bol of his man. He took a very personal interest. It wasn't only an intellectual relationship. It was a very personal relationship. I'm just saying that's how I'm saying mitzidei. I don't mean mitzidei. I'm saying that's the type of person he was with all his talmidim, with the people that he was close with. So there was a very personal relationship. Not really sure what more to say about remembering those years. I want to just point out one thing maybe that I feel is something which Rabbi Yoel used to kochsach him, and he also personified this concept. And that is, Rabbi Yoel Bechlal very much spoke about the inyan, that on one hand, when we speak about Chassidus Chabad, the Ufta of Chassidus Chabad, the Ufta of Chassidus, he would explain that Ba'am is the Chiddush of the Baal Shem Tov was to be Megala, the Neshama of a Yid, the purity of a Yid's Neshama, which expresses itself in Emunah Pshuta. There's certain Emunah Pshuta, which is not like the Welt understands Emunah Pshuta, that, I'm not 100% sure, I just have Emunah about it. Punkt verkehrt. Emunah Pshuta is the certainty of a Neshama, as it's discussed, let's say, in Vata Tetzave, the Gili of the Neshama of a Yid that's expressed in Emunah Pshuta. And that's Bechlolus, the Chiddush of the Baal Shem Tov of being Megala, the Esem HaNeshama. On the other hand, Alter Rebbe speaks about Chabad, about Seichel. And there were those that argued with Alter Rebbe, they timed it, that if you'll have Seichel, so then you're going to lose out on the Emunah Pshuta. Because then it's going to lose the Pshitus. And the truth of the matter is that the Alter Rebbe is timed fakert, that if Emunah Pshuta cannot come down into Seichel, so then it's missing in the Emunah Pshuta. Because the Atzmus of the Yid is so pure that Seichel is not a Hagbola to that Atzmus. That was the Nekuda that Rabbi Yoel spoke about very, very much. And so the idea is that Seichel is not like Seichel of Chakira, like a Chakira dika Seichel. The whole gather of the Seichel was that the Emunah should be leichten in Seichel. I remember, I remember saying over from Ramichel Apotzker, that they asked him, was when der Uftu von Alten Rebbe? So he started drehing with his finger and said, at der Bein vom Kopf hat verstanden Havaya Echad. So Pshat is, Havaya Echad is the Emes von Alikus. And the Emes von Alikus came down even in Seichel. So no, it's not a Chakira dika Seichel. It's like, I'm just saying, but Rabbi Yoel, I'm not talking about him, Adregas. On one hand, Rabbi Yoel was big Chesach in Seichel, Nachlas b'maz Rabbi Yoel. But on the other hand, there was a certain pshitus. There was a certain, the emunah which emanated from Rabbi Yoel. It was like in a very, very pshitusdik way. It was like a very simple. Some people even had problems with his simplicity and his black and white emunah azeidos. The statements he made at various different times, which brought out a certain pshitus of certain pshitus of what of his emunah, and on the other hand, it was all like somewhere or another it came down into seichel. In other words, it wasn't like a chakira dika seichel. I'm not sure if I'm saying it clear what I'm saying, but I'm saying this concept which at Chazay gekocht in them, the idea that the Nachlas is, he would speak about it and speak about the different madregas and how it came down into seichel. There's man Alter Rebbe, and then how through the Rabbi it came down more into seichel, and how through the Rebbe it came down mamish into seichel. There's the seichel of this. We speak about this. The seichel of someone learning Likud Torah, and the seichel of someone sitting in Lubavitch, and then the seichel of someone sitting in university and learning seichel. There was different madrigas of seichel, but it's all that the purity of the inyan should come down into seichel. I'm just saying a word that I that to me was comes to mind when it was speaking about Rabbi Yoel. So I'm saying these two, this Indian, first of all, he was a very personable person. He wasn't even though on certain way you would think he's removed, He wasn't a
that
religious
impression.
person. Maybe you could have that impression, but he wasn't that type of a person.
People knew him.
He was a very personal person. Like he took things and even things on a personal level. He took a personal interest in things that were maybe not so easy for him. But I remember coming to me and speaking to me about things that I don't think was easy for him to speak about. But he spoke about it because he wanted to help me. I'm just saying a little thing. Another thing I could maybe say about Rabbi Yoel was like one of the things that everyone knows about him. The idea of a tzir, of any type of a tzir, was something that was like to him, posel betachlus apostles. So I remember one Fabring in Taka Ocean Parkway. So breaking the Ocean Parkway. And I can't like resist in saying over the humorous side of it. Rabbi Yoel used to smoke, and he would light the cigarette. It would be a whole effort lighting the cigarette. It would be a whole aseder and aveda. I would light the cigarette. And punkt, it was a chavdal tevis. Then it was chavdal tevis, and it's just, I don't know who bought him a lighter. He got a lighter. He got a lighter. He bought a lighter. He had a lighter. So now he had a cigarette and the lighter. And that Fabrengen Rabbi Yoel was speaking about Kabbalah Seil. That was the Nakud of the Fabrengen. And the Nakud of the Fabrengen was that the Cheshbon HaNefesh that you have to have at the end of the day is not in my Kabbalah Seilnik. The Cheshbon HaNefesh is who is the Balabos in your life. Because when a person says my Kabbalah Seilnik, it's your tzir, my Kabbalah Seilnik, not a Kabbalah Seilnik. So that's a nicht wegen dir. So that's a nicht wegen du bist dabei Kabbalah Seilnik. So that's a very the balabos. That was the Nakuda. Leibel, he was lighting his, I don't know why I'm adding this knowledge kind. He was lighting the cigarette. And Leibel, based on Rabbi Yoel, in Chacham Samaisa, he wasn't such a mumch in Chacham Samaisa. So mainly he lit the cigarette. He knew that you have to pull down. There was like a certain thing. You pull it down and you roll it. That's how the cigarette goes up. But in his mind, if the cigarette is lit, if the lighter is lit by pulling it down this way, so Mistama, when you turn it out, you have to turn it the other way. I'll be honest with you, I don't think I would have noticed it. But the Zwischen the Chevre that were there, they were like, Chevre, which, whatever, it was like Pasha, they burst out laughing. And every time we lit a cigarette and he closed the lighter, so Pasha, they couldn't stop laughing. Rabbi Yoel had no idea why they're laughing. So Rabbi Yoel kept on saying, Ich verstehe was lacht. Lacht, was ich led in Kabbalah Seil. Well, mainly, that was going on all night. So all night he was speaking about Kabbalah Seil. All night he was speaking about how you have to be with Kabbalah Seil, and you shouldn't be the tzir of the Kabbalah Seil, but that was the Nakud of the word, which is all the shitase of this word, this Indian of no tzir. And on the other hand, Rabbi Yoel was gekocht. That in the case, that was also a big thing by him, that in the case when Simon sich vafot samayonis, so the idea of not being a tzir, you shouldn't be a tzir of not being a tzir, because being a tzir is not a stira to bittul faker. Just like seichel is not a stira to emunah pshuta, so being a tzir is not a stira to bittul, because you're being a tzir mitzad the bittul. You always had the famous story. With Mashpia, with the Mashpia, that Mashpia, the story with the Mashpia. That was also a story by him. Was says we kochten them. That Mesiras Nefesh, that's a Haris gewesen. I'm sure you have other people to talk to there.
No, but that was him. That was besides what he spoke. That was the non-seer, fully committed to the Indian, to the idea, to the truth of what he was.
I can't hear you.
It wasn't about the person. It wasn't about him. It wasn't about the person. It was about
it was about the Indian. Yeah. I just feel that like it's important to say that how many people feel so like indebted to him for their understanding, a little bit understanding of Chassidus and a little bit understanding about what Chassidus is and what the Rebbe is and what Chabad is and what Mashiach is, so many things that people like, Many of us, I mean, all the people that learned by him, I mean, all the people that learned by him were touched by him. That's, I think, something you have people, I remember once hearing from Mrs. Kahn, she was saying there's a Talmida and there are people that are in your class. There are different madregas. People that are in your class and Talmidos. He had the Talmidim. He had Talmidim, a lot of Talmidim, a lot of people Talmidim. And all the Talmidim today are Talmidei Talmidov, Talmidei Talmidov, all people that, he was really a big keli to be able to be Maiver, of Rebbe, Chassidus, to us, to this, to
It wasn't just besides the actual content of what he communicated, but the whole mahalach hamachshava, the way of thinking. Once you were linked by him, it was a whole different way of thinking. Whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, Shapiro, thank you everyone for your time.
Welcome, Rabbi Winner. Thank you very much for joining us. Okay, so you were a Talmud of Yoel, and perhaps you could share with us some zechrenis, what you remember, what you got from Yoel.
So first I want to say that ich bin from the Kleine Mekablim. The truth is that actually sitting in front of him in a shir, habe ich gelernt after a year and a half. There was 1.5 year when I came back from Shlichus Atzabacha. I was in California from Mem Aleph to Mem Gimel. And then was the Seder that when you came back from Shlichus, you spent the summer in 770. I don't know what's going on today. The Seder. So we came back, my Kvutza came back, Tafshin Mem Gimel, Shavuos Mem Gimel, and we stayed in 770. So mit Gelent mit Rabbi Yoel, the ganze Kayitz, Mem Gimel, he would stay. We stayed in 770, and we heard shiurim from him. And we heard shiurim from him in Chayvei Torah. We were 770 Bachrim, but the Seder was, he came Chassidus to give a shir in Chayvei Torah. We would go to Chayvei Torah. We made up, I don't remember exactly, maybe twice a week, maybe 3 times a week. Somebody would pick him up from his house. We'd give him a call. He'd go, okay, give me 10 minutes. And then someone picked him up. He came to Chayvei Torah and he gave a shir. That shir was Be'ikir L'Kutei Sichos. The Gedichte, the Skabovke in Yonim. Chiliktes, Dvarim, Eikev, Vaschanan, those in Yonim. That was summer Mem Gimel. Chutz from them, I learned from him, I'm trying to remember, maybe Mem Hey. I don't know which year. He gave Samach Vav 1 year and he gave Ayin Beis another year in Yiddish. I was by one of those years. Okay. Now before that, ich bin a bacher in Ocean Parkway. And I'm just giving you should know the background from was ich gehört von Yoel. So he used to come to Ocean Parkway. The Seder was that there was a kvutza every year of 770 bachrim that learned in Ocean Parkway. And a sach from the famous Talmidim learned from Rabbi Yoel over there, because that was like the Tanai. Don't ask me. Rabbi Yoel did not give shiurim to bachrim in 770. The only way you can get a shir from Rabbi Yoel was if you learned in Ocean Parkway. So there was a yeshiva in Ocean Parkway. They needed a kvutza bachrim to go there. Many bachrim, either noch shlichus before that they were in Kfar Chabad or in Teres Emes or whatever, they could be coming from overseas, let's say it's from a different country. If they wanted to learn by Rabbi Yoel, they went to Ocean Parkway. And Rabbi Yoel would come there and teach Samach Vav. In that group is Tzigim Blatt, David Feldman, Shalom Charatonov, Shalom Bergerari, trying to remember, whatever. Asach. I learned in Ocean Parkway from Mesivta till after Zal, which I learned in Ocean Parkway from Lamed Dalet, I would say, till Lamed Tes. So being in Ocean Parkway, the Yoel would give a shir to the 770 bachrim in Samach Vav, but then once a week he used to give like a shir kolel in Ocean Parkway. Tanya Shurim. So I was there for many of the Tanya Shurim that was open to Mesivta boys, Zal boys, and also he would come to Fabring sometimes in Ocean Parkway. At the Grace Yom Tev, Mitas Kislev. So it was open house. Anybody could sit there by the Fabringans, and that was where he used to Fabring. That's where he used to Prave, So that's many years of, I was able to be around Valgenzich, by those Fabringans, those Shurim. So that's one thing. And the last but not least is the Friday night Shurim. This is legendary. B'meshach kol hashanim. It was unbelievable. Just to be metayr, a winter night. I heard these things changed. Today you tell a bacher, Seder, Yeshiva, Friday night, was from Lichbenchen till 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock was Ma'ariv in 770 upstairs in the Kleine Zal. So the Rebbe has this Seder, normal in 770, yeah. The Rebbe is davening downstairs with the Elam. The Bocherim in 770 went to Chevei Teire. I'm talking about my years in the Mems. Everybody went to 770. Sorry, everybody went to Chevei Teire, and Rabbi Yoel went through the whole. You got to say the Sichas. He would go through, usually in one sitting, the whole Sicha. Eichet from the Gedichte. Hey, Vav, Zayin, Shmois Chelik Vav, Hayedua, V'Gdirim Tachtenim, could be one night, one Friday night. So the Seder was, if I remember correctly, yeah. First he went there, and there was a shir. It was a shir, there's like 80 bachim in the shir over there. The whole 770. The Yoel's going b'chol ha'tekev like there's no tomorrow. 50% of the people are sleeping. The heat is far full blast. It's freezing outside. Bachim are exhausted from Dorish to Veracht, from Mivtzoyim. But the Yoel's going strong. So for die was in Gewend dorten, who were makabel and reingenommen, it was Gilead, Mamish, Shabbos, the Yoel get a shir, and it's going on and on and on. And then he finished the shir, and the Rechel said in the Gunim, with a Maimer. And then everyone walked to 770 and davened upstairs in the Kleine Zal. That was to say the Midah Shabbos b'Shabbate for years and years and years. So if you listen to those shiurim, it was the real Meiridike shiurim. It's a short, obviously it's not on tape. But I'm sure whoever went to those shiurim will never forget them. Und noch dem auf dem Weg, ich gedenk, walking from Chevei Teire to 770, gestorben. Der Knetsch, not whatever I'm saying. The handful of Bachim that were into it, were really into it. It was discussed the whole way to 770, the Rachfarin Daven, the Nachen Daven. It was amazing. So that's my sum total of my shiurim was had from Rabbi Yoel. And this mice, what I'm telling you with the Friday night, this is the Meshach Kol Hashanim. So if I was in New York, I mean, even after, like if when I was a little ältere Bacha, let's say 24, 20, I would just keep on going to the Shir Friday night, so given, Tam Ganeden, everybody would go. It was amazing. Okay, so that's my shaykhs. What was the question?
No, so what did you, was there something specific that Yoel would try to drive home or try to speak about, bring out, either in those shiurim, the Fabringens?
The Yoel's main nekuda, obviously, is the Chiddush from Rebbe's Torah. In those years, it was all about Lekutei Sichos. It was before my mother Malukit. And in the Yoel's world, Lekutei Sichos was the Chiddush of the Rebbe. In other words, the Nai Chassidus, the Nai Uftu. The Genom, the tiefste in Yonim, und reingebracht eine neue Sprache, eine neue Welt. Was käme und gewinnt. And his famous Moshe always said, Le Moshe, Hashgacha Pratis. Doch der tiefste in Yonim. Und der Rebbe geht am Moshe von der Balabuste. Aber bei Balabuste, jeder dacht auf seiner von Ort. So that's his example to bring out how the tiefste hechte in Yonim comes down to the Rebbe in a new Sprach, with a simple mashal, and the whole language of Lekutei Sichos is a tifere shlav and amshachas ha'etzem as me ken narod bring chassidus mata and chutz shein chutz imenu. I'll give you an example. This is like late night. Rabbi Yoel didn't speak so much Rebbe, as much as live it. Obviously, the matzav noch gimel tam is gebitten, but I'm saying when we were bocher, so there was a word he once said. I'm just giving you an example. So the Rebbe came at the Makkah Patish, the Eire Elal Kolona. After this, I'll give you a Farbrengen, the style, Yutas Kistel classic Farbrengen is about the Lamailam and Asechel, kommt up in Sechel. Was the Bleib Lamailam and Asechel. But the way it starts is, to understand that, we have to go back to Moshe Rabbeinu. And we have to go back to Matan Torah. Then we go to the Alter Rebbe, Chassidus Chabad, and then we get to the Rebbe. You get my point? So somewhere there, he's going, ich stell dich vor, aber Moshe Rabbeinu ist schon jemand gar anders, the Kfar Matan Torah. So that's the point. Yeshiach is nicht da, aber belebt schon mit Moshe Rabbeinu. Und bald kommt Matan Torah. So we're in Deir HaShvi, we're with Deir HaShvi, with Moshe Rabbeinu, so far Matan Torah, because Mashiach is not here, aber es ist schon gar anders. Get my point? Okay, so I'm going to say, what was the question you asked?
So you're saying about what Yoel would speak about. He would speak about
so
his Torah. And how did that translate to Yoel and what he wasn't thinking a month from the Bachram? What did he try to communicate?
I'm gonna say try to remember, you have to remind me. I'm gonna say three things which I think give you the main points. Kimuven Rabbi Yoel is ein b'dei malei. In sein Chushim, Chochma, Bina, Das. He's bein arich legamri. Von allem. But three things I want to say which I think made him mamish unique. Number one was nobody has a chush like him. Was can I reinkriegen in the Kli HaMakabel and do the brain surgery, mizogt. In his shir, he would say many times, Tanidr Pat, Tanidr Pshat. When he would say that, dem liegt the ganze Meise. So you could be a good bocher, learns Chassidus, by the Melech Tzibul. I'm a starke Makabel from the Melech Tzibul, B'Shalom. I believe the Melech is Maila. Those two are Hechef and Hala. But still, the Melech didn't have this chush that we're going to talk about now, which is, you could be a bacher, you've had many mashpiyim, you learned for many years Chassidus, and then you come to Rabbi Yoel. What happens now? What happens now is, he's the first one that's able to go in dein Kopf und sehen dein Tos, wie du es getracht früher, and then change it. What should I tell you? Which no one else does it like that. Und das sieht man bei Rabbi Yoel a chush, which we see later on in life more, we appreciate. I'm saying now, he was a genius at reading the crowd. That's why he made that sefer on Vayel Moshe, whatever, the Satmer, when it matzlich gewesen mit die Elam. Hechel Menachem Chevre. He went to Lakewood, he went to Gemeshvim Dorten. So it verstanden good the yeshivish sort of mentality. He had Mashpia private shurim b'meshach hashanim. You'll find out that the cooks rein in the roof, fragen the Rebbetzin, with Israelis, secular people, professors, people from all walks of life. He was the type of person, he knew where you're coming from. He knew your Welt, and then he's usually, let's say you meet a person, yeah? Okay. And you say, the Baal Shem Tov halt azeh, yeah? And he'll say, aber ich gehe in the derech from the Gra. du Machlekes zum Zeig Gedola Yisruel. Ich kann sich nicht daran mischen. So that's it. This one says like that one says like that. Shittis Abel Shem Tov is Azay, but mir gehen mit an andere derech, yeah? So there's no answer to that. That's a very difficult thing to be able to answer, yeah? So then I'd be able to, du verstehst nicht. Mir seinen mehr, the emeste Talmidi Agra. What the Pshat at Talmud from Gra? He'll get down to the show, hello, this where the emeste Tzioini. Achosid. Chas v'sholem Tzioini. But you get what I'm saying, yeah? So that's Yoel's chush. Nobody has that chush. And you see that Kinder book, you see it. The Pel Mamish. And the same thing is with Abocher. In Tevchet Timimim. Whatever subject you're talking about, Yoel had the chush to get to the Nekuda, to show where your mistake was, and then turn it around. So that's the first thing. So that's why once a Talmud that Galen by Rabbi Yoel, it's a whole thing. It opens up a whole new world. Jeder Sach guckt anders. Because now it first begins to appreciate what the Alter Rebbe sagt da in dem Perik. What the Rebbe will always bring with them Sicher. You understand what I'm saying? The second thing I would say, I hope I'm going to remember. The second thing I'm going to say is a very unorthodox statement. And I don't want to be meilich on this because this is like going into dangerous territory. But to me, in my very, very, very humble opinion, this is the number one reason for his atzlacha, besides for alle anderen yonim. Rabbi Yoel represented Emes. Heche von Tziyurim. He's not Merkaz, he's not Detroit, he's not Meshichist, he's not anti-Meshichist, he's not a head shliach, he's not a menal, and he's not a Mashpia. Was meint zu sagen? Hat nicht gescheiches zu Holos HaYishu. Baruch Hashem. No bocher had to ask him for a shuss. No bocher had to ask him for a shuss, and he never had to say no to any bocher. Versteht sich gemein? So, in andere Werte, most people, and that's the way life works, they're in a tzir. You're Rabbi Goldstein, because you have a kehillah. Und du bist Rabbi this, and du bist einer von the Chevre Yabezn Tzedek from who knows where, Timbuktu. I'm just saying, jeder eine hat sein Zier. And he gets stuck in that Zier, and jede Sache, was nicht in dem Zier, oder bestiert zu dem Zier, is not going to gel, is not going to go together. Wenn wir geguckt auf Rabbi Yoel, haben wir gehört, Rebbe, Chassidus, Rebbe, V'zehu. And that's why he was able to relate and touch everybody. And that's why, und das kommt von Bittel, Bemes, total Bittel. Sich nicht angehört any agendas, nicht sich angehört any Partei, sich angehört, hafatzes hamayonis chutz. That's it. There's no time, there's no limits. Hours in a car driving here, hours in a car driving there. I'm needed for the job, here I am. To be Magia Sicha from Rebbe, everyone knows Lamed Ches. You'll have to ask later, Chaim Shelbrook, when I get to what happened with the Mamorim, the Mugudike. But in Lamed Ches, Ki Yidua, the Rebbe said the Sicha Matzoi Shabbos, Rabbi Yoel locked himself up from Motzei Shabbos till Monday morning. In a room. That's it. Nishdok in Tag, Nishdok in Nacht. He's locked up from the second the Rebbe finishes the Sicha, working on it till Monday morning straight, and then it was given into the Rebbe to be Magia. And Baruch Hashem was Zeicha. That was the first time we had a big Hagah for many Sichas. So the second thing I wanted to say when we get to Rabbi Yoel is, as I believe, the Yisrael von seiner Tzlache gewinnt sein Bittel, Mamish, sein Bittel im Ganzen, und emes Mensch. You know, sagt alle werden Bottle von einem Emes, as the Wort von Rabbeim. That's him. Last but not least, I want to say, was Gemont von der Bocherim, is Take verstehen gruntig. In other words, you're learning a maimer, v'hinei, v'inyenhu, what's his v'in? Or what's the hemshach? What's going on over here? That whole word. His main derech is given, liegen in hecher in yonim, al derech the Rebbe shita v'hes chadas. I'm a licht in hecher in yonim, ist der Schkoffer beit sich, und der Schkoffer beit sich der ganze Mensch. Okay, we speak in closed. I think I gave you the main kudus. Was noch? Anything else, my friend?
Can you elaborate a little bit on the last point? How did Yoel actually, how did he do that? How did he, specifically, how did he do that?
So I want to say something again and again. I hope I'm not going to get into any trouble. And Shapiro repeated this. Rabbi Leibel Shapiro repeated this on the video of the Shloshim, and also in the video of the Shiva. You know what I'm talking about? They made two Farbrengens, and Leibel Shapiro said this. It's not like people think today. Rabbi Yoel at Giton, the Mashpia has to work one-on-one with the Bacha. That whole idea. In Gansen, not the way it was, and it was never like that. Rabbi Chaim Kesselman and that's so fine. But Rabbi Yoel had gegossen and gegossen and gegossen. That's the pshat that gearbeitet with the Bacha. So if there's 4 or 5 Bacha that came to his house on a Thursday night, in the Lamets, he would sit a whole Thursday night. So the Bacha saw that he cared for them. Und hat sich auch gegeben mit seinem Ganzen. But you had to be interested. When we weren't dealing with situations of there's a Yotzim and a Kal. There are some Yotzim and a Kal stories where Rabbi Yoel gehet wegen a Bacher, was es nicht beseder, und hat gerett mit dem, am soll sehen, etwas tun. Yeah, okay, that's a Yotzim and a Kal. Especially in those days, such a thing was more Yotzim and a Kal. But I'm saying the Seder was, like Lamashal, me personally, I wasn't from the Chavod that was like Rabbi Yoel's inner circle. I was just a good, I go to a shir, and I listen to the shir. And for whatever reason, he knew me by name. Just because of who I later married, and because, yes, if I was by a shir, I would ask him questions. But I wasn't from his inner circle that spent a lot of time mamish in his Dal Ramis, and he had those. The Bachim that were chayzim. They would walk him home after Farbrengen Shabbos. And there was the people who said, ich hab nicht gescharfer Kopf. Ich hab nicht, a schnelle Twisse, there's those type of Talmidim Chadudim, the ones that are schnelle Twisse, sharp cup. I'm not like that. I wasn't like that. And there was the Americans, that was the earlier years, the Lamets, and maybe the beginning of the Mems. But then later, once it started, bigger kvutzes, especially after I left New York, and the Nuns invited, it was the Israelis, and and so though the Israeli Chevre was in a sharp Chevre, Hamashnal Tvise, Ken Gut Lenin, Al Derech, and they were like the inner circle, you know what I'm saying? So those are the ones who obviously took the most from Rabbi Yoel. If you hung around him, and you're in his Dalet Amis, of Mesav B'Farag Leim, so then you're going to get the most. But the main point I want to bring out is, it was you had to press record, listen to his words, and take it in. That's how he was Mashpia. Not that he's coming over to you and saying, Shimon Hellinger, was macht? How are you today? You feeling well?
That was him. That was his. But Yoel that was his milah. That was his milah. Okay, that he just he gave out the emes and he.
No, what I'm saying is
lifted people up. He lifted them up.
Yeah, but I'm saying today people think that the only good mashpia is going to be the person who is involved with me personally, giving me a private share, calling to me, giving me private attention. And when I had a runny nose and a headache, he made sure to bring me a hot tea. It's all made of the Kazachen. But I'm just being tired. The Sunish given Rabbi Yoel.
Right. That was his milah. That's what his milah was. That he was taka. He was ben hecher. He was. Yeah. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been Rabbi Yoel.
The point is, I'm saying is, the Talmud had to have a shtickle intellectual curiosity. Then he began to appreciate more. You understand? Was tutzach, and they could speak the same language, and they could connect, and he could communicate. But the Bacher was something ganz nicht gechush and thinking, was a Chabad, was the Alter Rebbe, was is the Ufte from Chassidus. Somebody not thinking like that is not really gonna be able to take it. You understand what I'm saying? So getting back to at Mashpia given the Iker liegen in Hecher in Yonim, liegen in Teres Achsidis, verstehen verstehen an Efen as a beite Mensch, learning Chabad, don't just dog Tillen. That whole idea, that's one of his main things, was it gemont and gemont and gemont. Versteht sich, gerät stark wegen Bittel. Right. Not Bittel like davening. Bittel was like, gib sich weg im Ganzen. I would say the Biel's main theme in Avodah was the word from the Tiyam Shakela. You know, any day based derech medichan. You see that schnit. You know, that schnit. I would say now that I'm working in Yeshiva, I would say there were two areas at nicht gerät zu viel wegen them that maybe, you know, if he was more aware of Umahalt and if he was whatever, at nicht gerät wegen Avas Yisrael as I feel, und nicht gerät as I feel wegen Yiras Shamayim. Now, whatever, because he would say Mustama Yiras Shamayim Tivis, it's not what it's about. And I think by Avas Yisrael, I think by him it was a Dovra Poshut.
Yeah.
Fully Zazun.
Yeah.
So, durchgewegt mit Sipurich Sidim and the Avas Reim. So I could tell you, by the way, from my Shver, just a side point, my Shver is at Nosson Gerari, Olav Shalom, father of Yossi Gerari from Detroit, Rabbi Yossi Gerari, Rabbi Shalom Beger. So they both were on the boat together. They came Yud Shvat, Tovshin Yud Aleph. They went on the boat Yud Shvat. They went on the boat Yud Aleph Shvat Sunday morning. They didn't know the Friedrich Rebbe was nostalgic. Then they came to New York. So my Shver Moshe Almal gelebt mit Nachlas Binyamin Shtibel. That was a Shtibel in Tel Aviv. It was the best place to want to hang out. Mit alle Chassidische Tzirim, haben verbracht dort in zusammen. And my Shver would always talk about it. Later, when the Biel's style changed, when this prat changed a lot, after Gimel Tammuz also, he started saying much more stories. Before that, he was not into the stories. People read the book now, Badak Chassidim, and they say how much he said stories, and the Prinim, was nicht given the Seder. You know, in the Lamids and in the Mems, I don't know about the Chovs, but ich stell sich vor, he wasn't, Reb Melech would say stories. By Verbringen by Reb Melech, in one night you could hear 30 stories. Reb Yoel hat nicht gerät meises. Het gerät the Havana, it was a whole wow, a mahalach, a Verbringen, like I said, Moshe Rabbeinu, Matan Teire, Deira Shvi, Tziz Mitzrayim, Alter Rebbe, Chabad, Adelamayla Mayla, comes up in the Mata, and then we come to the home run in the end, the Rebbe, Deira Shvi, Dirib Tachtenim, Bittel. That was the Biel's Verbringen. No one else Verbrings like that. It's unbelievable. But it wasn't so much Mises. Later, noch Gimel Tammuz, don't give Masach Mem with the and you go back, you see Taker, that so much of it is about the Shtibel, the Nachlas Binyamin Shtibel in Tel Aviv. So that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that's why I think in that earlier in his life, you know, when he was younger, he didn't speak about those things. It's like, that's a Devra Pashit. Mit darf man warnen in Jahren von Lashon Hare? Mit darf man warnen in Jahren von Midas Mushchosses? Mit darf man warnen, yeah, he spoke about Yeshus, Taka, always.
Taka, it's true what you're saying. In the later years, after Gimel Tammuz, he started speaking a lot about Avos Yisrael and Pashat and Yiras Shamayim. He would forbring about very basic things and speak to the Bachrim. I don't know if he became more aware or he realized this is something that's important to speak about, and he would be more about very basic things. Yeah.
Okay, so therefore, what I'm saying, my main point I want to bring out is the Frext. What was his Shturim? His Shturim was Stel sich Hecher, liegen Hecher in Yonim, Chabad, mit Beita Ashkofe, und der ganze Mensch wird anders in alle Unionen und gibt sich weg den Ganzen. That's it. Mir gibt sich weg den Ganzen. Bittel im Ganzen, like.
Right.
Everything else is Giluyim. Everything else is geblieben in dein Zier. Das Chaveh geben im Ganzen. Okay, I think we covered the base, the Yisodis.
Okay. Okay, Yasher Koyach.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Alle sollen sein gebencht mit Kultiv Stella. And
Amen.
Chaim,
Chaim.
Reb Yoel,
Shlem.
Reb Refoel, so haben wir Elias and Neshama Isbet, Reb Refoel Nachman, Hakein, so haben wir an Elias and Neshama Isbet, now it's good for ganz Klal Yisrael, and the Drike Brachis, so sein wir Kitzer an der Sheikh Neofer, take of me a mamish, who beseicham, begula mitzvah shlema, l'chaim.
Shalom Aleichem, Rabbi Chazan, thank you for joining us. Perhaps you could share when the first time you got to know Rabbi Yoel and what your impressions were of him.
It's not like I got to know Rabbi Yoel. I was a Bach in 770 and he was a Mashpia in 770. I didn't have a personal relationship, so to speak, so strong. I only knew that he knew I was in the middle of the year because I ate by his table Shabbos and he had asked to sing a certain niggin and I started it. So the next week he asked us, let's do a angefangen this niggin, so could he start it this week again? So I knew he realized who I was, but until then I didn't know even if he knew who I was. But I was always around in the shiurim and Fabrengens in his house eating Friday night. But he was a figurehead in the Babbage, so you grew up with him. I'm talking about before Gimel Tammuz, the last few years. So when I went to the Rebbe, so my father showed me who he was in 770, pointed him out to me, or there was a bacher in Manchester Yeshiva that was a artist, and he drew pictures. So most of his pictures obviously with the Rebbe and all different, but he had a few pictures of Tzidimi Jews. He drew a Mendel and he drew a Yoel. It was like it was just a feature of Lubavitch, I guess, of all of our youth. So in Yeshiva, when you got to know, all the Mashpiyim quoted him and even tried to give it to us. And when we're going to go to New York, we should go to Shiurim and make sure to get to know him. And I remember once in Teresemes, Rabbi Baruch Pevsner told us, he was like maflik b'shvoche. In some context, I don't remember the context. I just remember one line he said. He said, the Rebbe was mechanech for 10 years, how to listen to the Fabrengens, how to write the Mamorim. So if Rabbi Yoel writes in Chassidus, has a certain gather of Muggah, that's like an extreme statement, but it means to say that he is so trained in the Rebbe's way of thinking and the Rebbe's Torah. So when he writes it, it's with a certain samchut that no one else has, certain authority. And then when I came to Torah, so we used to go to Shur the whole time and this one bring as much as possible. And then once you start listening to him, so then there's a whole world of tapes, which is open to everyone. Everyone could listen to the tapes. So when I was on Shlichus, so I listened to the tapes on iBase and listened to some above. That was his involvement in a regular Bach. And then in the 770s, so we had the shir every morning. I learned by him the year before Tafshin Samachvav. So he had this plan to learn Samachvav, the Hemshech, to finish the whole Hemshech. So he actually taught more often and Amarim which he didn't usually teach because he was trying to go through Samachvav in honor of Tafshin Samachvav, the 100 years. I guess that would be.
Mm-hmm. What did you see by Rabbi Yoel when you sat by him, you learned by him? What was his main? What did he speak about? What was his impact?
I mean, there's two parts to him, I guess you would say. There's the Shurim, the Chassidus part, which he opened our eyes. First of all, the Pashto Nakuda, that you're supposed to understand what you're learning. When you read something, it's not just. I've learned with Chassidus with people afterwards, after learning by Rabbi Yoel, and I've seen how they learn Kuti Torah or Sam Mamorim of the Rebbe Shmuel, any Mamorim, even of the Rebbe. There's certain Kabbalah Seil they have to the Nyonim, and they just chazer and they say, and that's how people learn Chassidus. So there is many others understood better. And when you learned by Rabbi Yoel, you saw that he gave you a te'ima, taste, what it means to understand, and then you have to work yourself to broaden that and use it to understand everything you learn. But he definitely gave you glasses of that now you see through those glasses. Everything you see through those glasses. So if you explain to someone what is ruchnius, so once you know what ruchnius is, once you understand, when you say the word ruchnius, it's not just a word, it means something. So then you're always talking about ruchnius. All the elements and everything you learn about Nachlas is talking about ruchnius. So if someone will explain to you and give you a feeling for ruchnius, then it will change your whole way you approach chassidus. And the same thing in all the terms that are used in every mimer, tzimtzum. If you know what tzimtzum means, then it changes every time you learn a mimer, and it uses the word tzimtzum. If you in many areas, then you have to work on it yourself. But it's every time you learn to a shir, it wasn't just a shir on that particular issue. It was new glasses that you saw the rest of chassidus through those glasses. That was when I get to Haskalah.
It seems that Yoel also, besides the actual content of what he spoke about, the definitions and explanations, he trained Bachrim, Talmidim, how to approach chassidus, how to think b'chlal, how to understand ideas, abstract ideas, thoroughly, clearly.
So besides being a medical Masbir, and he was also a medical mechanech. I mean to say, he anticipated where you're going to go wrong, and he fixed the issues. He presented it in a way that you shouldn't have these mechshalis, you shouldn't have these stumbling blocks.
Right.
So he was a master mechanech in terms of forcing you to think more abstract. It's very hard to talk about it in an abstract way. You have to give mishalim of inyanim
sure.
But
right. He would bring up
the same person after you learned by him than before you learned by him.
Right.
In other words, he used to always speak about the two types of a Rav and Talmud. There's a Rav and Talmud that the Rav can chaz everything the Talmud can chaz everything the Rav said. But then there's a Talmud which Nasi Chushia Talmud Chushia Rav, that he will be able to tell you what the Rav said in this issue. So you have also a nigla. I mean, there's a story with Chaim Brisker that the Bachrim told him kashas, and he told each Bachar which sefer the kasha was from. So this is the kasha of the Yeshua, this is the kasha of the Moshe. He was able to tell from the kasha what's the style and who said it. So each mefarish has a style, even in nigla. But in chassidus, he made you have his style. He didn't just give you information; he gave you a style.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, his impact is not only on the Talmidim who learned directly by him, but through his recordings and his svarim.
He's the Mashpia of all the Mashpiim. So anyone who today teaches this is teaching more or less what the method that they got from him, or the mahalach, the way of thinking.
Right. So that was his.
He lit up. It's once you hear him. So anytime you hear someone else gribbling, and gribbling means struggling with ruchnis tika Indian and trying to understand it, then you just see that the room is light. You understand the Indian the way it is. So why are you looking and finagling and fidgeting around the subject instead of just saying the subject the way it is? I once heard a shir from a certain Mashpia on the topic, and the Bashkacha Pratis. I heard the same shir on the same topic. There were two tapes in the car, and that was what they switched on. And it happened to be was on the same topic, and you just saw one was Yisrael Techacheshach, one was grappling with the issue and around and trying to give me one husband and slugging it up and giving another husband. And Rabbi just explained the issue, and then it was just the room was light, and you just saw the Indian the way it is. So once you tasted it, you couldn't learn any other way.
Mm-hmm. Right. So moving to his Verbringens, this was his shiurim, his chassidus by his Verbringens. What would you say the theme of his Verbringens were? What did he speak about by his Verbringens?
So a lot of his Verbringens were hashkaf, I mean to say the way you're supposed to look at things. And then some of them were heroes in directives, how to live your life, or how to. So you can bring about thinking chassidus or dedication to chassidus. But the main focus for me, and it was the main thing we took away. He was a person that was a very, very great person in his own right, put it that way. And he was so bottled to the Rebbe, and his only Indian was to give us a te'ima and a taste of what he had, and to pass on the legacy of the Rebbe. But he was lucky, and his generation was lucky. So he felt an achrayas towards us that we should be mekusharim like him. So he tried to pass on the hiskashas that he had onto us. That's and if he did it, you saw it was with an agenda. In other words, he felt for us, and he did it as a taiva to try and be mechanachas and give us the hadracha that he had from the Rebbe and the feelings he had towards the Rebbe, etc. So I'm talking about I came to him after Gimel Tammuz, right? A number of years after Gimel Tammuz. So it was a new facet to be able to take a door, and I think that was what pushed him to go Fabring with Bachrim. When I was working in the Yeshiva in Staten Island, he came to Fabring for the young Bachrim, and his whole Fabring was about the Iskashrus and the Rebbe's caring about each individual Bachar just like he cared before Gimel Tammuz. That was a teichen, and you saw that he came with an agenda. People have complaints that very often he repeated himself by Fabrings. It's very pashut that he repeated himself by Fabrings because he didn't come wasn't an entertainer. He wasn't trying to entertain you. He came with an agenda, and a Bachar came from the beginning of Kutzah and to the end of Kutzah. That year, he wanted the Bachar to get certain Nachlas, not just information. He wanted to change the way of looking at things, and that he came into every Fabring with an agenda. He's trying to get through these points. So sometimes he's required to chazan himself.
Right. It's incredible. Rabbi Yoel himself, his own dedication to the Rebbe and to teaching the Rebbe's Torah.
He was an Ardarish Narmakayim for sure. In other words, you saw that he was an Ardarish, and he really was willing to give everything he had for in Koyach, and it was important for him that another Yid should about Chassidus or the Bachar should, and it was he was Meir Emes. When he said something, he really meant it. And he saw it really bothered him, or he really cared about what he was saying. And if he got upset about something, it was because he really got upset about something. Yiddishkeit and Chassidishkeit and Rebbe and anyone who put a block. In other words, if he was talking about something that was going wrong, it was something that really, really bothered him. It was really Negea, like one Elyain and the whole command of Mesivta, and it was a real, everything was a real issue.
Right.
Also, from my personal experience, what I saw when I came from Eretz Yisrael, and before that I was in Manchester in not in Lubavitch or Mesivta. I learned Yeshiva not in Lubavitch, and in the Goyish world the same thing. The Havdil. There's a tenua of postmodernism. In other words, don't be fanatical about anything. Don't be partisan. Try and see things objective, and don't be fundamentalist about any issue. Try and see things as like what Mendel used to call as a journalist. Stand outside and look inside and judge the situation as an outsider. So about Torah mitzvahs, so we knew that, but anything and above Torah mitzvahs, let's say, iskashrus, because it was a Chassidic Klali Yeshiva I learned in, so they tried to give us this chinuch that any partisan politics or party lines to fight to be a bells or to fight which is better, a satmar, a bells, whatever it is all tereif, is not true. It's not part of Yiddishkeit, and all these things are just cherry on the cake. You know, whether you're a bells or a satmar is just very, very minor differences, and that's the chinuch they pushed. It was with an agenda driven that they said a story with Chafetz Chaim, Moshe Chafetz Chaim, that there was a shver that had two edims, and one edim like fleishiks, one edim like milchiks. So the shver was a gvir, so he gave them every night two suppers, one milchiks and one fleishik. So the two edim sat on different tables, and then the shver was yard min chassav, and he didn't have money for fleishiks and milchiks, so he gave them just bread and whatever it was, and he still sat two separate tables. He says, "Mele, when you were eating fleishiks and you were eating milchiks, you sat two separate tables, mele. But now you're eating the same thing, so why are you sitting on two separate tables?" He said, "Chsidim, so they had what to fight about. They sat two separate tables. But today, this was the chinuch that they tried to give us. And then, I came to Eretz Yisrael, and even within the impression I got that the serious people, the people that Rebbe Chaim, that were davening and were doing chassidus, they were the ernst, the Balei Aveda. And then there was the people that just made noise and going miftzoim and screaming around going miftzoim, even themselves not going miftzoim, just a lot of hoo-ha, and they screamed about their shui, and the people that worked on themselves and were not making so much noise. In other words, not such partisan. It wasn't so much fluff. That was the impression that it looked like. The Mashpia in Yeshiva, the serious ones were more heavy in terms of avodah, and they spoke less about their experiences by Fabring and less experience about less about iskashros. And I came to Rabbi Yoel, and the whole thing was a sapach al yitzra. The whole thing was upside down. that he spoke about being partisan, being biased towards the Rebbe, towards the Babbage, as the most as a form of dedication. It just changed the whole. And I'm talking about biased in a positive connotation. And the same thing with
unapologetic.
Unapologetic. Yeah, but not just unapologetic. Dedicated and completely submerged and
it's not foreign to be single-minded and focused on and dedicated to the Rebbe.
But it's not just that. He was a person that this dedication to the Rebbe was mechayev him. He paid a price for it, and he demanded it should be what it means: learning more, davening more, or going to miftzoim and understanding whatever he was demanding and not bringing. But it was eskashus was a term that meant dedication and eschayvus and more work and working harder. It wasn't hot air.
Right. Bechlal, he disdained. He didn't like that the hot air and the slogans and the empty and the false discussions.
Imitation, minhagim, and things like that. He looked at it as shortcuts to discussions when a person doesn't want to work. I never heard that the line from him, but I'm just saying that was the impression that you got. That if it doesn't cost you, then it doesn't have value.
Yeah.
It's very subjective what I went through as a bacher. This was this metamorphosis that I had when I came to him, and I started respecting more. You go through. You have every chassid has to somehow develop be niskar of the Chabad, just like a person who's not the Babbage has to be niskar. So every chassid himself has to be niskar. So part of the niskarus is this that chassidus you have to pay a price for it. That's very much what he represented in my eyes.
Right. Going back to you mentioned the Moshe of Chaim, to other people as well. But you could say that Rabbi Yoel, he brought back, he highlighted the fleishiks. It wasn't just that he was preaching to be partisan. It was he actually had a product to offer. He showed you how this is something that is worth. There's something to live for, something to understand. There's an actual derech here, and there's a way of thinking, and a whole.
Sure, he didn't just talk demanding. He gave you mashalim, and he was giving you the product. He wasn't selling it. He was giving you the product, and you bought it because you liked the product.
Yeah. And this is something that he taught to Bachrim, and he really dedicated himself to this. You see how he bringed and gave shiurim, even advanced in age. He continued to give the shiurim for bringing with him Bachrim and to talk about these things.
This was his chayas. This was his real chayas. I mean, I remember he used to come even as a young man. He used to give a sheikh this in the morning. It was very older, and it was early in the morning, and he started off the shir. He thought his mamish going to faint in any second. It was like very, very hard for him to say the words, to get the words out, and he was pushing himself. And as he got more into it, and the Indian got more depth, and you saw him actually become alive from the Indian. The chassidus gave him chayas, begashmis, but you just saw it with your own eyes.
Right. Yeah, and Yoel was also about Shmua, and the way he was madrich.
He very much didn't like when people saw him in that light. In other words, when he in my time, he discovered that he had spoken about a chassid, and the only context this bacher that was listening, or the bacherim that were listening on Friday night about this chassid, was what he had said, and he was very nervous because he thought he's speaking stage 2. He's speaking to people that understand the culture of chassidim, understand already a bit, they have a context of history of who the nafshas of Pilas, who the people were talking about. And the same thing with Chassidus, by the way. I remember him, he said once to one of the Bachar that I was close to in my times, and I heard this from this Bachar, that certain yeshivas, the Bachrim come, that they know the background of Chassidus is better, and certain yeshivas they talk to them about an Indian, they've never heard this Indian before. He was trying to speak stage 2, and the Bachar needs stage 1. He's never heard of the concepts. So he was very sign in Darkei Chassidus.
Right. It's interesting that you mentioned about how his Hafgosh on his kashrus and he brought out a lot the chiddush of the Rebbe, the chiddushim of the Rebbe, and chiddush of the Shvi. At the same time, he didn't like when people try to look for chiddushim or try to come up with a new look for something new and different and to make is different and everything else is being rejected. He felt
he took for granted that Shvi is Shvi L'Rishon. In other words, he was coming from a culture of his father was a chassid and he grew up around chassidim and Ramat Gan and he had a certain seal before he came. And as much as Shraga Batira Maya Hani, you'd say, what is a candle in the middle of a so what is all this chinuch that he had in front of the shining sun that the chinuch that he got from the Rebbe, but he was a kli because he had a chinuch and he had a context to understand the Rebbe. He didn't come as a someone that was just nisgai in the midbar, you know. He had a context. And
right.
Expected you to, when he talked to you, he expected you to have a context as well. Right.
It seems like in the later years he started to share that a lot more. He started to, as he got older, he actually brought himself down more to discuss basic chinuch.
Maybe he felt that people didn't have it. I don't know. Maybe
right.
He felt that he was talking to people and they didn't.
Yeah.
I don't know him from before, so. I do know that he started. He had we used to call it. He had tapes. What does it mean? Like he had a thing that you speak about in Fabringen. So this was tape about this issue. This tape about this issue. So he had a certain tract about. He felt that there was a lack of Kabbalah Soil or about simple things about Machshava de Bramaisa. That was the later years. He started talking more from Sovei Perek Beis or whatever it was.
Yeah.
I mean, he once spoke about the Tefillah B'Tzibur.
Right.
He said that. Saying he saw certain Schwachkeiten that he didn't account for.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I remember speaking about even the Midas Toivus and not hurting someone else. These things they were pasha to him. They were pasha to him, and he felt it was even almost silly to speak about them. Like with Chassidim, it's obvious that this is. But he realized that it's not so obvious, and he started to speak about it more. Yeah.
So one of the was that when you were around him, he was such a large figure, larger than life figure. He loomed so large. In a certain way, he fakishived you, and I mean it in a good way. In a good way that you were enthralled by him, and you didn't see chesroinus. Maybe that's a chesaron, but his word carried a lot of weight because of that.
Right.
And I don't know how much he was aware, but he definitely didn't care to use his clout with people because of his position, and if he felt for Indian, so he would use it even it wasn't l'chvichvayde, let's say, or he didn't understand the words l'chvichvayde. So if he could prepare the Indian through using clout, then he would do it. I can think of two mashalim in my times. He called up Gvirim for Dikra Shabbos to give money to publishing the Rebbe's Torah in a way which is orach for Chedesh Yidden. So he didn't get any gain from it. He just did it the manner Indian, and he used his position and his pull with these people to raise money for this project. That was one thing. And then a young man told me that he used to give a shiur in Bar Park Thursday night. And one of the people that attended the shiur had an organization where he bought himself a van and he used to go around to the chasana halls and pick up the extra food and distribute it to families that, whatever, the mother's in hospital or just had a baby or whatever it was, that needed supper. So there's extra food from the chasanas, and he distributed. He called the organization She'eres HaPlates. So one time there was a family in Crown Heights that didn't want to use his service because he didn't like the hechsher of the whole of the food he was giving. I don't know, it was maybe satmar hechsher, whatever it was. So the family really this family really needed the help, but they were not using it mitam frumkeit. So this young man went over to Rabbi after the shir. He used to take a taxi home and said, "Can I take you home? And we'll stop by this family, and you'll convince them that in your situation, you're being from Yena's cheshbon." So Rabbi said, "For sure." And he drove him home. And he stopped outside this guy's house, knocked and says, "Rabbi, I want to speak to you in the car." And Rabbi told him that for the mishpacha you could give him this good hechsher. Don't worry about it. And in other words, Rabbi used his clout by this person to do chesed. And then he told this person, "If you ever need my services again, don't hesitate." So he's talking about he was by a shir barber giving talking about Achas Hashem, the highest in Yonim, Atzilas, Arich, Atik, whatever. And then he came down to do a teva to Yid, and he didn't hesitate, and it was a teva that required his clout. It was because of his position, and he didn't think twice.
Yeah. He mamish didn't hold of himself, and it wasn't in a way of, Yoel speaks about the bittul is not that he tut and bittul. He was like chila. There was no. It's the Indian, and that's it. And it's no. To say the het the Indian that is me, there's you. It's all. It was the bittul of a masculine. But
you have to explain what you're saying.
I mean to say is that it wasn't like a ton of bittul to work on himself, to break. It was the truth of Elokus and the truth of what the Ratzon Hashem was so clear, so real, that his own personal, his own Metzias was so irrelevant, so insignificant. The emes shined. It says even you didn't even feel so much the bittul. It was like there was. This is the emes. This is what is. Yeah.
And this was his Fabregan. Every Fabregan was a new race Shamshas Kaini and putting the Kavan El Yain, and that was the whole sprach that he. It's really the Rebbe sprach. I'm saying he was a loyal chassid, what I say.
Yeah. Yeah. He made the Rebbe's Torah, the Rebbe's Hadir Shvi. He made that accessible. He made that it's all the Rebbe, but he brought it down in a way, and he clarified it. He elucidated it through his speaking, his writing, Machshavas Chassidus, and all his verbringens, just to clarify, to make it the Torah Shlema, to make him Sudadike Hashkaka, as we would call it in the Welt.
Right.
Yeah. And he.
The thing that drew us to him was also that you saw anyone that was a who's who was so buttled to him. In other words, so macabre from him. Any one of all Mashpia and Magdashim Yeshiva, or any chassid that ever spoke to Yoel was a different league, a different caliber. So in Mela, you felt it was a chus to be around his Fabrengen.
Yeah, that's true. The greatest Mashpia. Yeah. Melech of Saul Friedman is going to ask him what
show yourself. You can read a mimer and you understood how you understood it. Then he read you the words, and something completely different contained within those words. So he read the same text as you, and he understood it like I don't know the word seichel nivru. It's like too radical, but it was a completely different type of way of understanding it.
Okay.
Saying his Torah is there. If you like reading, you could read it, and you can listen to the tapes. It's all there. Saying that all his shurim and.
Right. I've been making an effort to try to make his Torah more available in English. We did I did the shiurim with him. We had for over 2 years recorded videos of him. He dedicated himself to it without any gain or interest. He simply felt that there was a need to make the Rebbe's Torah which is relevant to Chassidus hadracha for living life. He felt that there were people didn't feel that Chassidus had what to offer as far as everyday life as living their life. They felt they had to turn to other places. That was after the Parsha and the whole Asif and Granites. And he offered to record a weekly shir, specifically choosing sikhs and ideas chassidus which are relevant to everyday life. And we wrote them up and we published them, the videos with the captions. And the Mitzvah Hashem, we hope to publish it in a sefer very soon.
Right, but that doesn't replace the real deep shiurim which you gave. Which I don't know. There's different levels of how accessible his Torah is. It's not his Torah. I'm saying how accessible you could learn from him. But the beauty is that everyone can become his talent. He's not limited to you could go clearish, you can become his talent man.
Right.
When I first started listening to tapes, I didn't understand that. When I first started listening to him, the Schit Chadibur is not clear, and took me a while to understand it. But once you understand it, you understand it. And so if people have this reluctance, or they're afraid to listen to a tape, just take a tape and you get used to it. You'll listen to 2-3 tapes, you'll get used to it.
Yeah.
Just one last nekuda. If you think about what the Rambam writes about Mashiach, that what's going to happen when Mashiach comes? The only interest is going to be Adas Hashem. If you can imagine someone like that, Rabbi was only to Adas Hashem Bavad, to learn Chassidus, to teach Chassidus, to explain Chassidus. People should know Chassidus. That was the Asik Kolayim Kuli. That's what his mind was focused on. That's the only interest in the world. So it's like a te'im of a person from Mashiach. Mashiach the Kiyid. It's a real Mashiach the Kiyid.
Ja, es ist, hat gelernt mit Yoel. In welche Jahren, wenn hat angegeben lernen mit Yoel?
Yoel gewesen in Sof Lametches, Umfang Lametes, Mem.
Und du hast gelernt mit ihm in Kahn in seinem Stub.
Aber in Corona, ist noch wie in Wilhelmsburg.
Ja. In was, ich kann dir erzählen ein bisschen, was hat dir gesagt einmal und wie ist es gewesen?
Irgendwann kam der erste Mal zu Rabbi Yoel, aber ich habe vorgestellt, ob es ein Professor, ob es ein moderner Mensch, ich habe nicht die Seifer Erchim. Der muss schon gewinnen, Seifer Erchim, ich weiß nicht, ein Krach, 2, ich habe es schon gewinnen, muss. Der Seifer Erchim hat ein moderne Cover, ein scheine Papier, ich habe nicht gesehen, bei der Klau macht nicht das Forum, Seifer Koidisch, bitte mir nicht so.
Ja.
Aber ich habe vorgestellt, ich habe nicht, das steht Rabbi Yoel Kahn, aber ich habe vorgestellt, ob es ein moderner Professor, ich habe gesehen im Seifer, aber ich habe vorgestellt, du bist der Mechaber. Okay, mit der ersten Mal zu Rabbi Yoel, wenn ich komme zu Rabbi Yoel, das ist ein langes Sipur, das sind nicht auf jetzt die Zahlen. Aber wenn ich komme mit der ersten Mal zu Rabbi Yoel, ich gehe noch ein Ecktisch, weißt du, Rabbi Yoel mit dem verknippten Bord, und got das Sweater mit der größten Loch, hat gehabt, du. Aber ich schon gesehen, was der Professor hat, du zitiert. Was der moderner Mensch du siehst, mit der verkippten Bord, steht doch für. Aber ich hab da einen Schock. Ich habe schon gesehen, als ich schon gemacht, ein größtes Tour, habe ich schon gemacht.
Ja.
Egal, fragt man, was willst du? Aber guck, man muss bedanken, meint der Walklan, mit Säubeklan. Ich habe gelernt, fahr die Moche Chabad. Ich habe gelernt, Tanja habe gelernt, ich habe gegeben Schiere Moche Tanja. Aber gelernt, auch ich gekickt ein bisschen. Das teuer, mit anderen vor, der Schabsumur haben viel aber gekickt, ich habe gekickt, andere mal eine Woche. Ich habe mir gemeint, Hesber, mal so, noch einmal so, was meint du, Spink? Mal, ich kann mal sagen. Nu, Rabbi Yoel, Kiada Hashem Atoi B'Olov, hat 2 Schuhe gerät, wie Male besäuft. Das ist die einzige Thema, was man gerät. Das ist 12 bei Nacht, gerät bis 2 Seiger. Ich bin heimgegangen von dort, Schicker. Wo ist Schicker? Schikoiris veloi Millionen. Von meinem Leben nicht geht, welche Wörter. Mit der Sache Sbure, mit ich habe ja gerät, der ganze Koch.
Später Peter aber gefragt, dass er kommen noch. Ich habe das Sach Scheiles in Tanja gut gelernt. Sieht es, Scheiles und Stein ist durch, Stein ist jetzt. So ich kann kommen noch einmal reden. Der gesagt, ich habe noch einmal gesagt. Also laat, ich geworden Jedides, wie mit Kwai bin Ashir, jeden Tag Shishi. Ist wusste gewesen, eine von den Sachen, die gewesen, was ich interessant, was ich von der Rebbe Kahn noch später gehört, hat der Yoel und Jack in Chayshim gefangen, dann sie gehen noch der Masse mit, wenn in Wilhelmsburg mit der Klepp, Lamed Zayn. Später, Kitzer, hat gefragt im Rebbe, also verstanden alle der Rebbe hat es moidet gewesen, in der Rebbe geißen, oder beutig sein, nicht vergeisen, wir sollten schon am Beiß nicht stehen, wir sollen nicht vergeisen, ich werde es ist ein gewisser Meter da muss, wenn ich in Hand, der nahe dort weiß ich nicht, wo das ich gemerkt habe, es ist ein gewisser Meter. Später gewesen, ich frage umgekommen, dort in Kronarzt, dass ich wenn jede Woche, der Weg gewesen, ein gewisses Korn gewesen. Weil, kon je kennt nemen ken na Haag, a Driver, nicht a Wilhelmsburger, nicht a Kronarzt, aber dem muss wohl die ganze Stadt gewisst werden, in einer Minute. Aber wir nehmen einen Schwarzen. Muss kenne ich nicht. Aber auch gefahren mit dem Autobus. In beide gewähnt, wo das Dorf schon, dem die eine Zeit nicht gewähnt, hat schon da nahe Welt, aber dem sie gewähnt zwischen Wilhelmsburg und Krona, sie gewähnt a Gegend von Scheuren, mit Schikieren. Sie haben sich dort zu gehen. Jetzt, wo ich umgekommen, aber ich dachte, umkommen, da war, als Buch Hashem, ich bin umgekommen nach Leib, umgekommen nach Scholem. Damals, später, der Rebbe Kahn, der Zeit von Belbuster, als ich fragt auf einem dem Telefon, aussehen, der Gerät, und ich wollte sehen, der Gerät zu der Labs, jetzt muss schon ein Beistag in Stieg. Der Rebbe ist sehr wichtig, also nicht eine Geil sein, sondern nicht vergeil sein in schon ein Beist. Das ist ein größer Mercedes. Wenn wir eben das erste Tag, dann können wir noch Fälle, wie der Rebbe stark umgeübt auf dem Acht geben. Also nicht umrühren, hat sich der Rebbe, aber der Rebbe gewollt, Futz am Jonis, was mehrer. Fragt euch, hat Spur. Aber deswegen, beim Rebbe sehr wichtig, also wir sagen, schon ein Beiß. Der Geschöne von der Yoel darf ich nicht suchen. Ich kenne das weiß ganz Chabad, alle weißen. Ich bin Spor geworden von der Yoel's Bickel, von der Paschte. Das ist der sehr Spor geworden. In Chabad, öfter weiß man, dass es nicht ausgeschaut nach viele, weil in Chabad ist du pushet. Aber also wie ich komme von anderen Plätzen, in ich habe Atayom Schachs mit Kolmine Chugim. Ich habe Kippah Zerugot, ich habe Polish, wo du willst Training denken. Kol Sugim. Ja, als ein Mensch mit der solche Geschönes, im vernimmt ein Mamad, der Rebens Häuser, der ist spitz. Andere Plätze, du sehr da hier, mal passt. Ich habe es gesehen, die erste Regel, wenn ankommen, wenn ich ein Mensch sieht, ich mache über das, ist am Tisch, ich esse ein Ecktisch. Also wie auch ehrlich. Mit der Pastes, mit ja, schon mal, was willst du? Hat mir dazu wie zu haben, das ist auch älter von mir, ja. Wenn jemand schon 30 Jahre damals. Das für dem sehr Sport geworden. In ich meine, als das ist der Achidisch, ich weiß nicht, Chabad du es genig mach, weil Chabad muss durch pushet. Bei mir ist nicht genau durch pushet. In Atayom ist nicht durch pushet, weil ich kein andere Kreisen. In das ist eine gewaltige Sache, das. Der Pastor sein in Mensch so du musst Bereich meiner Covid, ja. A viele das kann noch schon mal fehlen, weil sie nicht gehen bei der Sache Code beklau. Es wird Bereich noch Covid, es ist da mit sie beklau. Ich bin scharf die alle Sachen Covid ja, nice. Dus a gewaltige Meile. In auch das Verlohne sein. Ich bin mir eingemann, ich habe gelernt ein bisschen Chassidus, aber wir kommen zu Rabbi Yoel, aber ich verstehe nicht gut. Ich habe gelernt, ich kenne nicht. Ich habe gemeint, ich bin ein ganzer Jahren. Ich habe gesagt, ein bisschen Bekiers in das Forum, aber wir kommen zu Rabbi Yoel, aber ich verstehe nicht. Ich hatte Geduld, gesessen, über 2 Uhr, gemacht jeden Lashishi. Schuhe lang. 3, 4 Schuhe, das ist normal. Einmal ist mir gesessen, das ist einmal, nur. Die gesessen, 5, 12, Seiger bis 37 in der Früh. Das ist einmal. Auch die gewesen, wenn der Bürgerfix werden vermarktet. Man gelernt Tanja, Samachwuf, verschiedene Sachen. Und dann fragt werden mit, ich will sehr vermarktet. Lass mal lernen sich. In dem muss er aufgestanden und Chies am meisten, also war ein neuer Mensch geschlafen, ist 8 Schuhe. Dann habe ich aufgelebt. Ja, ein neuer Mensch gewesen. Ich glaube, das ist ein Chayes. Ich bin noch, ich meine, ich komme von Aschir, und ich komme noch, ich bin ein ganzes Tag von ihm gewesen, ja. Und später noch gewesen. 12, wir sagen, 1, 2, 3, 4. Bis 3, 4, ich bin normal, ich bin gemacht jede Woche. Einmal im Glenn, das ist eine Ausnahme, da kommt das einmal bis 37. Wir haben sich gerade auf 12 bis 37, das ist gelernt. Das ist gewesen, Mamesh am Ende im Habe. Da Rabbi sind kommt das Sach Schoech, weil sie das Sach sie hat gesehen, dass das Schir durch ihr aber gerade im Connection, weil mit Rebellion, das Mann mit Rebellion gehen mit Rebellion, das ist normal mit das Mann. Durch ihr aber sie hat man Sadr gewesen. So kimmen jedes Mal in Bus in Wenn. Der Credit kommt hier. Schön, ist
wie effektet der erzählen die meisten mit eigentlich der gute Siches. Für das erste Mal geöffnet der gute Siches. Wenn es von die Amune von
der was ich der erste Mal wir wird noch ungenagt. Ich habe nicht ungenagt, weil ich verstanden Teike, weil ich kennt up nach Wochen schon Teike gesehen. Aber dort mir angehabt in Zakaran. Und nicht und schon Chaich da Mine. Es gibt ein paar Idale Teil. Guckt mal, das ist eine sehr schwere Predigt. Ich habe eine Cipher von Rav Korf. Dort du erscheint Bier auf dem Peilig. In Korf habe ich gewusst, weil ich gerade so eine Cipher mit mir stehe Woche. Und Korf ich mein Kosher in der alte Zeit noch von morgen dort besed. Du kommst gut mal lernen, fein. Komm mal lernen, kann nur gehört die Kasche dort und der befragt hat noch Teig gehabt, du ist nicht Korf. Korf kennt wegen der Kasches. Nach Fall der Trizium. Ich habe gut gesagt, habe geschwiegen. Wo man gelernt, der Sicher, hat zu tun, schon gedickt, ich die Sicher sind da so, was dann muss es gehen nur bei Kosten. Man gelernt, der Sicher 4 Wochen, 4 Latschisches haben wir gelernt. Noch einmal durch die Kai. Das ging bei mir, das ging der erste Satz, was habe ich gemacht. Noch so muss sehen, die alle meistens auf mir der Zeit dort. Als in Hebla wollen, Kilam Yesoma Ruach. Und wir haben Gadlis in Teure in der Mine mit alles, das ist super damit zu sehen. Aber das ist der erste Tag, wo es mir, wie damit ich gar nicht sicher ist. Und noch gelernt Tanja und Brenz. Aber gut, man tun wir nicht Scheich da Mine, sie kommen zu Paris alle Tage, sagt mir, sehr schwer Perik, sind ich klar, der will du, so eine gute Cipher von was von der Schiakor. Und dann mal noch, habe ich dann Teig, was ist nicht Yaakov, ich habe dann Teig das da haben. Hab mir gut gesagt, dann haben wir schon wissen die gemacht, in das wenn der erste was habe ich immer der. Aber einfach sie gehen agenaiden die Lashishis, das kann ich man schon, das kann ich vergessen, sie in jeden Lashishi agenaiden. Du sie bekitzt, du was auch Brot, aber du sie der gutes Adorn. Mamsche genaiden. Wir gelernt das Chai, das Koch, das brennt. Sie sind gewaltig. So, das dann alles Lülen nicht muss so. In bringen ich Teike Mashiach, Teike mit Yad Mamash.
Amen, das Koyach.
Sag, ich habe du Kaddish ganz Jahr. Noch ein Schneis, ja, warte, ich viele, nach etwa Ovi Rabbi, Rabbi Koidim, wie alle Chayol im Abo. Wir wollten geffen doing, mir angebracht gemacht sieht es. In der alle Hanfen sind du Talmidim, du sagst ganze Scherchere, die siehst du ich. Das Talmidim Pirates in Pirates und du Unterschied. in Gura Sach, wir dann mit Chabad ins Chabad und noch dem nicht nach Dorf, der Amulek, der Ambetaraskos, das bin ich gewesen. Aber bis nicht will, aber ich kehre bis nach Chaim, krieg nach Chaim. Das ist ein Klippe, da doch nicht geduscht. So darf einer auf den Klepp, aber noch dem ist schon hat zerbrochen dem Chemis Abarzu. Alt Schuss von Yoel, alter Schuss.
Ja.
Schon, dann alles Leben muss sein. Sei gesund, bis wir es